Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. I feel like we need like a little, like we're sitting across from each other, like we're getting ready to do a draw or something. Ryan, tell me a little bit about who you are. Just introduce yourself to the audience, and that way they know you if they don't already.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm Ryan Carbrey, the Chief Executive Officer of Newfound Rentals and RTO Smart. Newfound Rentals is a rent-own company, and RTO Smart is a technology solution for the rent-own and shed industry.
Okay. All right. Very cool, man. Yeah, got to know you over the past year. Even got to go out there and get beaten some pickleball. Unfortunately, gosh, I can't believe. We need a round two.
Yeah, I think you need to come back sometime.
Yeah, I think so. I need to. I'm halfway there. See, I should have just came on out to Wichita, and we could have made this thing work. Tell me about how you got started in the shed industry, man.
Sure. So it's been probably 7 or 8 years now. My business partner Phil and I founded Newfound Rentals after he was working at a different rent-own company, went to go work in the software industry, and kind of were talking one day and saw the opportunity in shed and shed rent-own. So that's how we got started. I did the technology, the accounting, the finance, and Phil did the sales, marketing, and kind of we've grown from there.
Nice. So, let's see, you started out, you were in Houston, is that right?
Yes.
Is that your native Texan?
So I'm originally from Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
Moved to Texas for school at Texas A&M.
Okay.
Moved to Houston for graduate school at Rice.
Nice. So you're like one of those really smart guys. That's what you're telling me.
I would never say that.
I'll say it for you. How was your time at Texas A&M? Did you enjoy that?
Sure, I really liked it. Big school. I
Yeah.
went from a school of maybe 100 people in my class, maybe 85 people in my class, to 10,000 plus in my class. So different, but I really enjoyed it down there. I really liked Texas.
Yeah, love Texas.
I really liked Houston as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. That's great. So, what's been your journey walking through these 7 or 8 years and getting to know the shed industry? What's like one of the biggest things that you would say has changed in that time?
Sure. So I'd say kind of change is constant in the industry. Probably the same in many industries.
Yep.
But kind of what I've realized today is it's not just enough to be as good as you were 6 years ago, 5 years ago. You have to be changing. The shed manufacturers are changing. The shed haulers are changing. The rent-own companies are changing.
Yep.
And hopefully all that change combined is better for the customer and better for all the kind of participants in the industry.
And rent-own's so competitive now, probably compared to whenever you got in, right?
Yeah, I would say my personal opinion is kind of when we first got in, we could go on a road trip, meet 10, 15 different shed manufacturers, dealers, and we had a good chance of signing up quite a few of those. I'd say today it's a different kind of sales cycle in that it's not just going to meet someone for the first time. It's building the relationship, seeing what they need in their business, helping them create value in their business, and kind of that's how we build the relationship these days, to kind of partner with these manufacturers rather than just being one of their providers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the competitiveness brings in sort of that circle, right? It kind of brings in that thought of like, hey, I've got to do more. What's some things that's changed in like 7 or 8 years for you in rent-own outside of just like the competitiveness? Like, are you seeing like major changes in like laws or statutes, or is it what's some of the stuff that's kind of surprised you or that we should be aware of?
Sure. So I would say, just in general, the customers are becoming more aware, which I think is a good thing for the industry. We don't get as many calls today as we did 5 years ago of a customer being surprised about what's in their contract.
Yeah.
On the legal side, always important to keep up with that. We use kind of the industry standard on our side, kind of continuing to get insights and changes there. But I'd say in general, just the needs of the dealers and manufacturers are kind of what we've been focused on the most, whether that's technology or service, or both on the dealer side and the customer side, and keeping up with that and making sure that we can provide their customer, our mutual customer, a good experience so everyone can feel good about the transaction at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all changing. I mean, I agree with you on like that sales cycle. You know, there's like there's a whole host of options to choose from if you're a manufacturer, and you probably get, you know, knocks on the doors and emails all the time now. So it's very competitive, you know, right? So like, whereas before it was something that rent-own was bringing an option being brought to your table to help you sell more. Now it's kind of, there's multiple folks to choose from, which has benefited the shed manufacturing.
Yep.
Really over time. I heard somebody say that the best position to be in right now is a shed manufacturer. I'm not sure if that's true, but like, you know, who knows? At one point, you know, rent-own seemed to be that, but I think that they've got their work cut out for them. What do you guys do at Newfound, man? What's a little different there?
Sure. So we pride ourselves on having what I think the best customer service and dealer support, but also we want to make it as easy as possible for a dealer, customer, manufacturer to get a contract into the system and approved. And that's one of the things that kind of forced us initially 5-6 years ago to develop at the time an internal tool with RTO Smart, and making that contract generation kind of all the way from kind of the initial lead. Maybe a lead comes from your website, phone, idea room, or another one of these integrations, all the way to getting that contract or that building built, delivered, and then ultimately paid for it, all the way to that customer having a good experience, paying, using the app easily. Just making it as easy as possible for the dealer and the customer has kind of been one of our goals.
Hey guys, this is the Shed Geek, and I'm here to tell you about the latest in financial innovation to hit the shed industry. It's a program called Backyard Finance. Everywhere I go, shed manufacturers and shed sellers are always asking, how can I get a better payment option for my customer? At Backyard Finance, they're making this a reality. You might be asking, how do I sign up? Simple, just go to Backyard Finance, click on the Get Started Now button, and create an account. After that, you'll have 200 plus banks competing to give your customer the best financial terms possible. With Backyard Finance, you can service your customers two ways: direct to customer lending or direct to merchant lending. With direct to merchant lending, simply fill out an application. It takes about 2 to 4 weeks to process that application, but it'll allow you a variety of financing options to make you a more competitive retailer. With FICO scores as low as 500, 600, or 700 plus, your customers will receive financing options with APRs as low as 2.99% or as high as 29.99%. Credit applications are approved in just 15 to 45 seconds. To know more, contact Backyard Finance at 833-692-2286 or email info@backyardfinance.com today. Backyard Finance, funding backyard dreams. RTO Smart, such a cool name, and honestly, such a needed thing in the industry. I was saying like a year ago, if somebody would actually create something like that program, gosh, it seems like the floodgates would just open. 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, when I was in your office, you guys did a really good job of keeping that quiet, using it internally, and then beginning to launch that. Kind of walk me through. Give me the elementary, give me the kindergarten version of what RTO Smart means and what it's going to do.
Sure. So, big picture, we are kind of technology focused, multi-tenant software. So, Newfound Rentals is using the software currently. There's 10 other rent-owned companies using the software, and that could be next year. Maybe that's still the same 10, or maybe there's 100 more.
Yeah.
The software is meant to be scalable in that direction. And kind of the genesis of why we created it is one of our manufacturing former Newfound clients. We were using the tool internally. kind of the way we made it multi-tenant, being able to have multiple rent-own companies on there, is one of our manufacturers wanted to start their own rent-own company. And we were trying to think, hey, this isn't the first time we've heard this.
Yeah.
This is maybe something that we want to get involved in, whether obviously we would love to keep them as a client at Newfound, but maybe that's not 100% possible all the time. So we want to be involved in the situation where if they do start a rent-own company, how can we help service them even if we aren't directly involved as the rent-own company? So that was the initial customer, was one of our old manufacturing clients. And now a couple more manufacturing clients have came on, but kind of companies completely unrelated to Newfound are also currently using it.
That's great. Yeah, it seems like starting an RTO company is starting its own business. So I mean, if you're in manufacturing, really just saying I want to do my own, there's a little bit more to it than that, right?
Yeah, I think kind of what I like to say is I think it's easy enough for kind of anyone to run a rent-own company up to maybe 50, 100, 200 customers.
Yeah.
And at that point, it gets overwhelming. And we've seen that in our business where companies come to us at around that point, 200, 300 contracts, where maybe they don't have the processes, the procedures, customers aren't paying, they don't know where their inventory's at, and we can help them kind of get modernized in that sense where they can kind of run their business easier because, as you said, it's a completely different business than manufacturing.
Yeah, it's, hauling, there's so much that goes into it that the reason I say it's its own business is because you have haulers that specifically haul and make a good living doing that.
Yep.
And then they might want to scale. See that with I think of Mervyn Vargas comes to mind. I mean, I know there's a lot of other guys out there that have a big fleet of trucks, but I just think of his and United Transport and 7 or 8 trucks on the road. So I mean, you can start in a truck and then scale, but I mean it's the same with sales. I know guys who only have sales lots, whether they're consignment or just wholesaling. Buying wholesale, they'll have 3, 4, 5, or 6 lots, and then with manufacturing, it's the same way.
Right.
So rent own it should be no different of a thought. If you're breaking out Excel spreadsheets basically to keep up with your customer, there's a lot of things you're going to find that rent own takes care of on the back end. And I know this just from being involved with rent own over these years now, is not everyone pays their bill.
Sure.
That's probably a surprise to much of the audience, but that's actually a reality. Not everyone pays their bill, and now you have to have these systems, these processes, and these employees in place to go through this process of collections. And there's legal. I mean, there's so many nuance to that part of it. You can maybe do 100 customers and be happy, but I mean, if you're trying to scale that, it can be very difficult, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we like to think that most of the customers are kind of genuine. And I personally always take that point of view. Kind of that's my initial thought.
Sure.
But not all of them are. So being able to kind of be on top of the ones that aren't paying, both maybe because they have a life circumstance where they can't pay, and
right.
You guys need to, or the rent-own company needs to have a little bit of kind of compassion for those customers and help them get back on track if they can. And the customers that have no intention to ever pay, hopefully a very small minority, need to be on top of those as well.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to have missing sheds and things go lost, and that doesn't do anything good for our industry. And,
right.
and as those things happen, I mean, word spreads quick among thieves, right? So,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
for those who are being disingenuous, word gets around, and we don't want to see any more of that if we can help it. And I know there's cool things that people are trying to come out with and things that they're trying to do to help negate some of that, but you can take care of a lot of that too at the source.
So one thing that we've added recently is kind of ID verification, making sure the person's who they say they are, making sure their driver's license matches the person, making sure their mailing address matches the person, making sure if they tell us they own the property, that matches the county records. These are all little things that maybe on an individual basis doesn't seem like it really matters, but when it all adds up, I think it really kind of helps prevent fraud and things of that nature.
Hello, Shed Builder. This is the Shed Geek, here to tell you about one of the coolest things I've seen, the first of its kind, the Joey Pivot Lift. I have visited hundreds of shed manufacturing shops across the country, and one of the first things shop owners and shed builders mention is the amount of fatigue that is placed on the everyday builder. If you own a shed shop, you know that your builder is an asset to your future. With the Joey Lift, you'll see more production, and your builder will appreciate you investing in their well-being by replacing the thousands of steps they have to take up and down a ladder all day. The Joey Lift is perfect for shed builders, roofers, painters, and laborers working to add that special layer of detail on your shed. It's so easy, even a geek can drive it. Where do you feel like the industry's going, man? Like, you've been in it for 7 or 8 years. Like, give me sort of like a 30,000 foot view of the different dynamics of where you feel like it's going. Give me your crystal ball that only Ryan can tell.
Sure. I don't know if I'm the only one that can tell this, but I think in general, just more customizable. Everyone wants their own solution, whether that's owning their own rent-to-own company, whether that's participating in a rent-to-own contract. Kind of one thing that a lot of the manufacturers don't realize up front, but they quickly do realize, is that rent-to-own is very capital intensive. So a shed manufacturer, from my experience, I think there's a wide variety of ranges here, will profit anywhere from 3 to 10, if they're really good, maybe 12, 13% net on their shed sales, and they can turn that inventory on average 4 times a year. Really good ones, again, 5, 6 times a year. So on that $1 of investment up front, they make, if they're really good, 10, 12 cents. If they churn that 3 to 4 times, they make 50 cents. Where a rent-owned company also makes good profits, but it's much more long-term. So you're not going to get that money back for, on average, 2 years.
Yeah.
So because of that, there needs to be a lot of solutions on the rent-owned side for the companies that do want to start their own rent-owned company or participate or anything like that.
What of some of those companies that have signed up and started using you, and I kind of want to touch on, like, that's something that you can provide through RTO Smart for a manufacturer. If a manufacturer is looking to do RTO, that's what RTO Smart can basically do.
Yeah, so when we initially started marketing this thing, we did not target any manufacturers. That isn't who, maybe it should have, but that isn't initially who came to our mind. It was other kind of rent-down companies, or either existing or new. But since we were at the shed show, advertised a little bit, we're actually getting manufacturers probably more frequently reaching out to us than other rent-own companies on wanting to start their own rent-own business, or maybe they've already started it, but they realize that they're not kind of maybe on top of it as much as they need to be.
And how much the software can actually help organize that for them. Really, I mean, that's the component. The key to it is getting a like on a discovery call.
Yep.
Kind of doing a demo and walking through and seeing the software. And I think it's that way with any software.
Sure.
You know, like so one thing I'm not a fan of in the industry is sort of just like taking someone's advice for anything.
Sure.
I love everyone in this industry, but I kind of want to know for myself. It's like Les Brown has a quote, says, no, you know, everybody wants to be, everybody says money won't bring you happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves. Right. So, you know, I want to see the software. I want to see the product. I want to see the door. I want to see the ramp. You know, for me, I kind of want to experience it, because it's not enough just to build my opinion based off of what someone else says. Are you a shed manufacturer, dealer, or hauler looking for a trusted resource to build or upgrade your website? Do you need a simple business website or a more robust and dynamic e-commerce site? Are you looking for an affordable option with digital marketing solutions for your small business? Are you looking for paid ads using Google search engines or social media platforms to reach a new audience? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to check out Troyer Websites of Texas. Did you know that 46% of the 5.6 billion searches made each day
are for local businesses? At Troyer's, our SEO strategies will help you get on the first page of search results for your shed business. At Troyer Websites of Texas, you will be sure to get 5-star customer service with proficiency and skill. Troyer Websites just launched their managed digital services to incorporate all your marketing needs into a single dashboard. Here at the Shed Geek Podcast, we trusted the team at Troyer Websites of Texas to develop our website, and we couldn't be happier with the results. To know more or schedule a discovery call, simply contact the Shed Geek at 618-309-3648 or email info@shedgeek.com.
Sure, experiential learning and all that is very important for all industries.
I was super impressed when you demoed the RTO Smart platform, even long before the Shed Expo came around, and I was like, gosh, how have you kept this secret? This is awesome. This is neat. I'm a geek on stuff like that, so I kind of can't help it. But I love whatever the shed industry is doing, different and cool things, and that's just something that's been needed for so long.
I think our software is very intuitive, and it's the same piece of software from start to finish. So the customer's using the same software, the dealer's using the same software, the manufacturer's using the same software for the rent-to-own side of their business.
Yeah.
And then we're able to integrate with all the other tools that they're already using to make it kind of a seamless experience throughout that life cycle of that customer.
What's been your experience and feedback from some of the RTO companies that have signed on with you and using the software?
Sure. So the 10 that's been using us for kind of pre-shed show, they love it. They kind of already know we're doing a good job, and we're very responsive to any of their needs.
Yep.
Kind of since the shed show, there's been a lot of positive feedback about kind of the interface and being able to use the software. It's a little bit longer than a sales cycle of just being able to sign someone up. Like you said, they're going to want to see it, demo it, learn about it more. But I think general feedback is they love the software, they love having options, and they love kind of all the technology focus, compliance focus, finance focus, really to make their lives easier.
So your background is in finance, and I think you did like some accounting.
Yep, I did. After Rice in Houston, I did business consulting,
Nice.
mainly in the oil and gas industry down there in Houston.
Okay, very cool. What part does that play a role in, like, consulting with shed companies now?
Sure. So, everyone's always worried about basically top line, how can I increase my revenue,
Right.
and then how can I decrease my cost. So when I'm asked, and I'll normally only opine if I am asked, I try to help companies kind of get in that direction. I think it's a lot easier today. I think most companies have already done a really, really good job of cutting cost, or it's known how to cut cost already. So basically how to increase top line is what I'm primarily focused on when someone asks for my help there.
I got you. Well, we may just have to have a conversation off air then.
Sure.
No, I have just getting to know you over this last year. It's been pretty cool to already your team. I mean, just the experience. Gosh, the way that you guys handle the process, the inside process. What I've seen work at Newfound. Everybody's so kind, and I really think that plays a big role whenever it comes into collections, don't you, with rent to own?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the good things about rent to own is that 85% of the customers are going to be good customers. You never hear about them. That means the 15% that you do hear about are going to be maybe not always positive stories, and that's always the kind of headline of the conversation, because you're only going to remember the last people you talk to. You're not going to remember the people that you never talk to. So one, just making sure that the customers can pay as easily as possible is important. But two, if they do get behind, giving them options, especially if they're genuinely having problems or something like that, getting them options to get back on track, make them feel good about it. Again, I think for us and probably every rent-owned company in the world, and sheds at least, we want that customer to own the shed. We don't want to pick it up.
Yeah.
So kind of thinking along those lines, whether that's modifying their contract or giving them a couple months reprieve or anything like that, we're very open to. But if we do determine a customer is maybe not being honest with us or ghosting us, not talking to us, still being polite in the interactions with those customers, but being very firm and getting them kind of in check on, hey, you need to pay for this, or you have the option of us picking it up, or we have that option in some cases of getting it picked up as well.
Do you feel like you've seen like much of a change after the pandemic? I mean, because so many sheds were sold, and I'm sure, that increased the RTO number quite a bit too. I think the MBSRA did a study that was in 2018 or 19.
Yep, pre-pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, that said like 22 months average payoff or something like that for a shed. Do you think that's gone up or down? I mean, because the rent-owned companies took a lot of risk during that time to be able to provide all those sales. I mean, we cleared inventory in this nationwide on shed lots during that time.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I think everyone hit record numbers during the pandemic, right? Whether that's the shed manufacturers, the dealers, the rent-owned companies, kind of everyone you talk to did great. I guess we won't know for sure
be a little bit, won't it?
How we look at them kind of as vintages. So whether that's a yearly vintage or a monthly vintage or a quarterly vintage, how does that group of contracts perform?
Yeah.
So far, we have not seen, at Newfound at least, any degradation of performance overall.
Nice.
But it's always in the back of my mind, hey, the economic indicators are out there. Maybe more people are going to lose their jobs. How's that going to impact the business? So far, we haven't seen it. But it wouldn't be surprising if we do, maybe in the next 6 months, 12 months. And I think it's on the rent-owned company at that point to try to be as flexible as possible to kind of maintain those relationships with the customers, if possible.
It's looming. I mean, you hear talks about a recession, constantly.
Yep.
It just seems to be looming, if it's not already here, right? I think a lot of times it depends on your level of financial expertise on where you would kind of place that. What happens during something like that for a rent-owned company or for a manufacturer in the shed industry? Do you improve as a rent-owned provider in terms of like sales? Do people lean on payment options a little bit more during that time?
Sure. So I think maybe the demographic, the customer mix maybe changes a little bit during downtimes. Maybe more people become open to rent to own that weren't before. But I think that's also true that we've seen with the increase in shed prices and kind of the size of the sheds. That's also become true. I don't think anyone can tell you for sure exactly what's going to happen, but I'm expecting maybe currently, and depending on where you're at in the country, this will vary a lot, but maybe currently, if you're in a place where 40% of your sales are rent to own, if a recession or a deep recession does hit, maybe that increases to 40 or 50% as people are looking for more of those options.
Do people even realize that there's that high? I wonder if some of the listeners realize there's that high of a RTO provision in some areas. I always look at it kind of like a temperature lowering, starting at the top of the country. And then you just work your way down in terms of RTO. You start in like Michigan, a lot of times you'll see 20% RTO, or New York, 20% RTO, and you get to maybe like Alabama or Louisiana or maybe Texas. And it's crazy because there's little pockets everywhere.
Yep.
But you'll hear like 50% rent own, 60% rent own, 70%. So your RTO provider becomes a very integral part of your process. So vetting them and picking the right one for what your vision is terribly important.
For sure. Like you said, I never thought about it, the temperature gauge before. But
It just seems to be.
Exactly right. I think that also comes with the customers being more sophisticated and learning about the product. I mean, they have the option of whether they want to keep the building or not. I think as a rent-owned company and a manufacturer, would always want the customer to keep the building, but the customer doesn't have to keep the building, so we have to be.
It's a month-to-month lease. I mean, and that's the biggest thing is like it's a month-to-month deal, basically, and I think a lot of people don't realize that it could go that high. And also in the South, they build more. I mean, they build year round. You know, the weather is just going to be a little bit more favorable.
Yep. So I think this is just my hypothesis, but you start seeing the rent-own rates at the 50, 60, 70% range in areas where rent-own's been around longer than maybe in Michigan or New York. So those customers, Phil always says, my business partner, you would never go into a restaurant and order a hot dog if a hot dog wasn't on the menu. All these customers know that rent-own is available and kind of what it means and how it works, and maybe more some of these areas.
I have had to convince people when I worked in rent-own that rent-own is not the devil. Why is rent-own not the devil, Ryan?
Sure. So I think a lot of people kind of just need more options, whether that is financial, maybe they have bad credit for whatever reason, or just they know their life situation doesn't allow them to fully buy a shed right now. So I think anytime that we can give options to customers, the better for that customer. If you really think about it, an option shouldn't be able to hurt somebody. They have the option to do it or not do it. Maybe they make the wrong decision sometimes on certain things, but I would much rather have a customer have the choice to rent a shed and have something that they want versus not have that choice at all. So,
no, I think that's a good point. I mean, kind of like hearing the comment, you know, that rent-own is expensive. My natural knee-jerk reaction early on was, yes, you're right, but it's an option. I've come to a point now to where I would say, like a lot of times when I hear rent-own's expensive, I'll say, well, like in comparison to what? You know, to kind of let them fill in the sentence. You know, It's like, well, it's just expensive on its own. I'm like, well, I don't know. If you, for instance, if you went and impulse bought a new Harley and you can afford it, but you just can't afford to leave it sitting out in the rain, you didn't think about it's the aftercare of buying the new motorcycle or the new lawnmower, and you want to protect it. So you're obviously going to build something, and you know your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. I used to hear a friend of mine say that in ministry in drug and alcohol rehab. If you've not planned well, I don't have to be worried about. Like, I don't have to be stressed out about that. So to me, buying the new lawnmower means the aftercare, the maintenance, and housing it somewhere too. I shouldn't have to lower my prices to accommodate.
Right. Yeah, and I always think it's easy for the person that doesn't need the option to say something is expensive, right? So if someone has $10,000 to buy a shed, spending X number of dollars a month might seem expensive, but the person that doesn't have the $10,000, they're currently using an offsite storage shed, or they don't have a storage shed. Maybe to them it's not expensive in comparison to what their other options are.
You think the like the self-storage, that's kind of like the biggest competition for the shed industry? See, I come from a unique perspective that I learned about like what I would call competition in sales, different companies and their products and what they offered, but I never really saw them. I saw them more as an ally, like someone who does what I do. If I was a car salesman, the enemy's walking, right? Like not buying a car. So if I'm in sales, the enemy, so to speak, is like those who are doing the self-storage, because that industry dwarfs, backyard storage like what we offer.
Yeah, I think it's a different experience. So people that know they're going to be living in a place for a short period of time, the experience of being able to go somewhere, get something for 30 days, 60 days is a good option for them. People that know they're going to be someplace for a long time, being able to buy or rent a shed in their backyard that they know is going to be there for 10, 20 years, that's a better experience for those customers.
Let's get into some deep water.
Okay.
Where do like divisors come from? Where do you feel like that number comes from? Where does it get generated? Where did it get generated, like starting in the industry? Give me some history on that.
Sure. So, divisors, just for the people that don't know, is the kind of amount. Typically, the cash price is divided by the divisor to get the monthly shed payment or rent-own payment if it's not a shed. And I think in some states it's dictated kind of what the maximum amount you're able to earn from a rent-own contract. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of back into the highest divisor possible in those states. And I think in general, it's kind of got to a place on, hey, interest rates are this, money costs this. We know there's going to be X percent of defaults. A certain number of customers are going to default. I know at the end of the day, I need to make a certain return on my money. Knowing all these things, this is what the divisor needs to be. I think the industry kind of has gotten to a point where kind of everyone knows what that number needs to be. Yeah. It'll be interesting to me to see if that changes as interest rates increase or if it does continue to increase. We have not made any changes at Newfound, but a couple of our providers that are using RTO Smart have made those changes in their software kind of as a, whether kind of maybe as promotions to go down at some point and some going up due to interest rates. So it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
That recession's really, that looming recession's kind of dictating that, a lot of that because of the interest rates. You guys kind of dabble in some finance too, I think at Newfound. Is that right?
Yeah, we, for kind of manufacturers that we've worked with for a long time, we do some of their financing for inventory. If there was a desire to do financing on the rent-own contracts, we might consider that. I think kind of it's a different, just like starting a rent-own business is different than starting a manufacturer. Right. Starting a financing business is kind of different than a rent-owned business. So my suggestion always to kind of anyone that we're working with is, hey, go to your bank first. Yeah. They're going to be the cheapest. If that doesn't work out, come back to us and we'll see if there's anything we can do.
What do you think is going to be the future of RTO? Like, do you think RTO will be a major staple in the industry for quite some time? I mean, the next 10 years for sure.
Sure. So I think for the next 10 years for sure. I think customers, as we've seen with a lot of the kind of buy now, pay later products, everyone's going to monthly payments. Rent-own's been there for a long time. Yeah. Shed rent-own's been there for a long time. We do kind of back to your other question, for our manufacturers, we do offer a financing option. We don't manage those ourselves, but it's an option for them to sign up and kind of get another lead that way.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think monthly payments is definitely here to stay, whether that's rent-to-own, buy now, pay later, or something else. Yeah. I think customers like that optionality when making their purchasing decision.
I think a lot of that fits into kind of like with like the subscription models on most everything else. I mean, softwares, you see that is, even with television. I remember saying there was about 15 years ago, and I was talking to a gentleman I really respected, and I said, I can't pay off everything. I can't seem to pay off my taxes. I can't seem to pay off. I mean, even my TV, like I don't have to have a TV. I guess that's the option. But if I had a TV and cable, I was like, man, it's just the monthly bills, they just keep showing up. But that's really what is like, that's sustaining.
Yeah, for sure. You see it in everything, right?
Yeah. Netflix, YouTube,
Spotify. I wonder the average number of subscriptions people have these days probably is close to 10, I'd imagine.
Oh, I'm sure.
So kind of just adding one more, the shed subscription, I guess you could say. The good thing is with rent-own, at least, it ends at some point. So the customer can keep that asset for hopefully a long time.
Break down, there's been a lot of conversations on the Shed Sales Professionals page. I really feel like you are a unique voice that can kind of bring some clarity to what that looks like for each divisor. Each divisor might have, say, like a split. Some people will call that split principal. Some people will call that split rent.
Sure.
Dive into that a little bit to offer some clarity for like, and bring it to my level. Give it to me kind of elementary.
Sure. You saw my eyes widen a little bit when you asked this question, but it's 100% rent.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that's what the contract says, and that's what the lawyers are going to want you to say.
Yeah.
And then kind of the way you can think about it is that rent you pay gives you a discount on the cash price if and when you do pay it off early. So I think typically that discount, let's say, is 60% on a 36-month contract, and that can vary by company or anything like that. But let's say for us, 60% on a 36-month contract, 60% of every monthly payment every rental payment the customer makes could help lower the price if they were to pay off early. It's not a super satisfying answer on how this is explained, and we have to explain it a very specific way to the customer because they're not used maybe to hearing it that way, but that is actually what's happening. They're paying rent. 100% of their payment is rent, and then they're getting a discount on the property due to paying that rent.
And basically, if you pay that rental fee for 36 months, then you're essentially giving them the shed.
Yeah, at the end of it, basically 0%, $0 payoff, you now own the shed.
Yeah. Why do we stay away from words like principal, and why do we stay away from words like finance?
Sure. So I think financing is a good option for a lot of people. I ultimately kind of see in my mind that 30% of the customers or a third of the customers will be cash customers. A third of the customers will be kind of lender financing, whether that's banks or credit unions, and a third will be rent-owned. And maybe those percentages are a little bit different, but those are kind of the three categories that I see. So for the financing companies using principal and interest, that's great. And kind of the key difference between kind of a rent-to-own company and a finance company is a rent-to-own company owns the asset while a finance company is typically lending money on sheds, typically unsecured, to someone to buy an asset. So the customer will actually own the asset while they're financing it. The rent-to-own company will own the asset while it's under rent-to-own. And so at the end of the day, while you're in a rent-to-own contract, you're just renting the property rather than financing the property. So if you're not financing the property, there's no principal or interest or kind of other typical normal financial
terms
being used.
Because you're assuming that the contract doesn't get satisfied in a rental agreement, there's two options. There's involuntary or voluntary pickup then basically. Because the contract has not been satisfied, the ownership of the property, whether it be a shed or backyard structure, still belongs to the company. And whenever you work with manufacturing companies across the country, you buy those sheds, and then you allow those payments to be made. All the manufacturer's doing is helping to negotiate, basically getting that customer onto that payment option. So that's why it's important for their dealers to be educated on RTO, or at least RTO terms.
Definitely, and I think the more knowledge the customer has, ultimately, it might make a sale a little harder up front, but ultimately it's better for both the manufacturer, the dealer, the customer, and the rent-owned company, so there's no surprises. The last thing you want is a customer that thinks, hey, this is a $5,000 shed, I paid $5,000, and they end up realizing they owe more money. That's not a good situation for anyone. So we definitely at Newfound try to educate the customer when we're doing those initial phone calls on kind of what's going on there, and also try to train and make sure the dealers and manufacturers are using the correct
lingo,
words, and all that as well.
No, that's good. So how define secured and unsecured I'm just trying to get. I'm trying to get through all the elementary aspects of it, and say it to me like I'm need the kindergarten version.
So a house is typically going to be a secured loan. There's an asset there that the bank is willing to go kind of foreclose upon that backs up the loan. So if a customer stops paying their mortgage payment, the customer owns the house, but the bank has a process of basically getting that title converted to, or that deed converted to their name. That'd be a secured loan. Something's backing the loan specifically. A specific asset is backing the loan. While unsecured is typically a bank will give a loan to an individual. Maybe they know what that loan's going to be used for, but there's nothing specifically backing the loan. So most shed financing would be, I don't want to say all, but most non-rent-to-own shed financing will be unsecured in that it's really the financing company giving a loan to the individual to buy a shed.
They might ask for collateral, or they might go just off a reputation or bill pay history, or
at least with the company we partner with, it's all unsecured.
Yeah.
So it's just the individual's kind of like personal backing. Yeah. Like, hey, I have a history of paying my bills. I have a history of paying my obligations. Give me the financing to buy this shed, and the shed itself is not going to be collateral for that loan.
Yep.
As a mortgage or a car loan would be collateral for those.
And those unsecured loans are going to come with a higher.
Yeah, typically they come with a higher interest rate. I know interest rates are rising everywhere right now. But I saw recently kind of a mortgage today, I think, has a 6 to 7% interest rate. A car loan can sometimes have lower because they're lower duration. I've seen still 0.9%. I don't know how they're doing that, to 3 or 4% on car loans. And a shed loan, it used to be kind of when interest rates were a lot lower, we could get people 5.9%. I'd say today you'd be lucky as a customer to get 8.9, 9.9 if you have really good credit.
So what does that mean in financing terms whenever you say it's 3% or 4% on a car? That's 3 to 4% on what?
The amount that you borrowed to buy the car, for example. So if you borrowed $10,000 to buy the car and you had a 3% interest rate, if you didn't pay any of the principal, which you would be, you'd be paying $300 a year basically for the privilege of being able to borrow that money from the bank.
Money costs money.
Money costs money, right?
What it boils down to. If you don't have money, it costs money to use money. Now you're having to pay back that money in another plan. I think some of those education 101, sometimes it's just necessary, because if we go in, I think of like sales managers going in and setting up lots, and one of the things that they're going to be responsible for is they're going to be responsible for moving your Newfound rental payment options out to rolling that out to a customer. And they may not have any knowledge whatsoever other than what life has taught them, which could be completely inaccurate or unknown. It could just be, unknown. They've never had that. So they're going to get taught on the internet, and they're going to get taught through their friends, and they might not have the right education.
Or they assume something.
Or they assume. A lot of people will just assume this is the way it is or the way it was. And you get that with customers that come in. So if the dealer is not any more educated on the process than the customer, then the customer can't possibly be educated on what it is that they're purchasing.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I think dealers have to make the commitment themselves to kind of learn the product that they're selling, whether that's a rent-to-own product or a financing product or a shed. Oftentimes they're selling more than one of those at the same time. And then the rent-to-own company has the obligation to give those resources and that knowledge and that training to those dealers to make sure that the customer is educated on what they're actually getting.
Man, I think it's great. See, like, you're the right guy to talk about this stuff with. I'm telling you, I enjoy it. What's your plans, man, for the next 10 years? What you got going on? You going to keep taking RTO Smart and Newfound to new levels?
Yeah, I think Newfound and RTO Smart, kind of both great platforms to kind of continue building the business. Like we said, we're not going out there proactively knocking on 100 doors these days to try to find shed manufacturers, but shed manufacturers do reach to us that maybe they have a custom problem they need. Maybe they want to start a rent-to-own company now that we have RTO Smart. But we see kind of tremendous growth in the industry as kind of everyone, maybe my 1/3 of cash customers, maybe that'll become 10% or something over the future, but more and more people looking for payment options and us being able to service those and kind of service manufacturers and dealers in the space. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there still.
What you said RTO Smart started just because the internal process of a client wanting to do that. What's next, man? Like, is there like more software? Is there more cool things that you're going to do or that the industry's going to see?
Sure. So one good thing we built at the time, it wasn't called RTO Smart. It was just kind of an internal tool for Newfound. We made RTO Smart when a manufacturer that we were working with told us they wanted to start their own rent-to-own company. But as we're onboarding more people into the software, the kind of type of requests and customizations are kind of coming in all the time. So the software is constantly improving. We get kind of requests on how divisors can change, how kind of payments can be applied. Sort of anything you can think of can be customizable in the software with a request. Some of it's already built in. So I think kind of one cool thing about the software is those requests, assuming someone's not trying to make something proprietary, which if they are, we'll keep that private, kind of becomes available for kind of the industry, and the industry can grow and evolve faster than maybe they have been able to in the past.
I think that's great. What if they want not just to use the software, which makes it really easy, really cool, but what if if they can finance their own contracts? I mean, if not, can you get them in touch with somebody, that can? Or
Sure. So I always think for someone that's wanting to start their own rent-to-own company, kind of initially you're going to need a little bit of your own money. Then kind of going to a bank is a good option. If neither of those work, then you can come talk to me and maybe we'll be able to help out. Kind of one thing that's really important, though, is as you grow, kind of the compliance requirements become kind of higher and higher, whether that's with your own internal accounting or what the bank's going to want to see.
Yeah.
I say kind of from my own personal experience, it's really easy to go raise like $500,000 to $1 million from kind of friends and family. A bank, if you have a relationship with them, will probably kind of put a flyer out there on you, give you $500,000 to $1 million, kind of after you've shown that you can run the business a little bit.
Yeah.
But kind of once you get to that needing $5, $10, $25, $50 million range, the requirements of
just ask the shed geek and they'll write you a check, right?
Yeah, exactly. The requirements of what the bank is going to need and how to stay compliant with all the states kind of goes to another level for someone wanting to kind of entrust in you that amount of money, basically.
Is that stuff stressful? Is that like that level of like those conversations?
Yeah, so we used to have at Newfound probably kind of 4 people full-time, basically just making sure we're in compliance.
Yeah.
Whether that's kind of bank compliance or government compliance or sales tax compliance. We've been able to reduce that a lot with the software. And not even our own compliance. We have external compliance in terms of external auditors, making sure that our financial statements are presented correctly and things like that. So the software has helped us tremendously in that arena that probably won't be as important for kind of someone just initially starting, or they might not realize it's important, kind of initially starting a rent-to-own company. But as they grow, it'll definitely become more and more important.
What's your best advice to give them if they're looking at starting?
So I'd say like I said, anyone I think kind of that has the drive can start their own renting company, 50, 100, 200 contracts. But if you have the ambition to go beyond that, make sure you get set up correctly to start. It's a lot easier to set up initially than kind of try to fix the problem later. So just make sure you're getting your legal in order, your accounting in order, your finances in order, kind of your internal kind of ethos on kind of how you're going to treat customers in order to make sure you're kind of in a good shape as you do that growing.
Man, that's great. Final thoughts on what you would share just with the shed industry in the hot seat today? What's your takeaway from all of it right now, where it's at, or your best piece of advice you could offer?
Best piece of advice, I think kind of in general, we're lucky as an industry that in general I find people in the shed industry tries to be ethical, continue to be ethical. As and if there is adversity coming up with a recession, make sure you kind of take care of your people, take care of your business, and kind of keep yourself in good shape for when we come out of that recession.
Man, great advice. If somebody wants to find out more about Newfound or RTO Smart, who would they contact?
Sure, they can contact me, or they can go to the website, rtosmart.com, or email me, ryan@rtosmart.com, and we'd be able to get them set up on a demo or kind of phone demonstration pretty quickly within a couple days.
Very cool, man. Love the product. Love that you guys were able to launch it from an internal perspective. Thank you for letting me see some of that early on, and gosh, just seeing the amount of buzz that it created at the NBSRA, getting to work the booth there. People seem to be really wanting the product, in need for something like that. And
yep, we're very excited, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. I always love talking to you.
Thank you.
Me and you always have good laughs together, so let's go eat. What do you think?
Yep, I appreciate it. Yep, let's go.
All right, man.